8 of the ABB FIA Formula E World Championship from Tokyo, our second time here. 12 months ago we had a brilliant race which culminated in Maximilian Günther for Maserati taking victory closely in front of Oliver Rowland and Jake Dennis. Now 12 months later the complexion of the championship has completely changed, and also as we head into free practice 2 and our first race day of 2 this weekend, the weather has turned on its head as well. Let's remind you of the calendar for season 11. We kicked off at the beginning of December with Mitch Evans taking a fantastic back-to-front victory from the rear of the grid right to the front of the race in Sao Paulo. Oliver Rowland took his first win of the year in January in Mexico City, and then the doubleheader in Jeddah saw Günther taking his first win ahead of Oliver Rowland the following day. Wehrlein got off the scoreboard in Miami, and then last time out in Monaco we saw Rowland taking victory on the Saturday and Sebastian Buemi taking his first win in 78 races on the Sunday for Envision. Here are the drivers that will be on the grid here this weekend. We'll see how they are ready to get on and battle with the conditions. What a weekend's worth of racing we are expecting as well. The return of Pit Boost, and the first time we've seen that here in Tokyo as well. It was a single header last year. Now with the double header we've got a Pit Boost race expected today, and then tomorrow back to a sort of more traditional Formula E format. My name is Tom Brooks, alongside me Katie Munnings and Andre Lotterer here to guide you through the action. Katie, Oliver Rowland's been on brilliant form so far this year. He's got a 48-point lead in the Drivers' Championship.
Yeah, he has. He's definitely in the flow of it. He's been quick consistently across a lot of different tracks that we've got, all the different types of circuits, the street circuits, the purpose-built racetracks. You can just see that he's really enjoying this season, and obviously with a really strong 2 podium finishes in Monaco, extended his lead over both the Porsche drivers. Yeah, absolutely. It has been his consistency that's really helped him out over the course of this season. So let's have a look at Tokyo then. As I said, our second time to the circuit. A few changes to the track for 2025 as well, with a reprofiling and resurfacing going on. The removal of a chicane down at turn 16. Andre, what do you make of this circuit?
Yeah, it's a very tiny Mickey Mouse circuit, the drivers say, but it's very technical and tricky for the drivers to tackle. Not so easy to overtake, so strategy and the pit boost will play a big role to get track position. But maybe the modifications with making it a bit wider and removing the chicane into 16 will give them some opportunities to overtake. But yeah, it's super cool to be able to race in Tokyo. Jealous of these guys, you know. It's my second home here. Was racing here 15 years, and then the year after it stopped, and it got announced on the calendar. So, but I'm here with you guys, so it's good.
Well, we're glad to have you here. A bit of a local, really. 15 years you said you lived in, wasn't it? So,
yes.
Yeah. So there's the circuit there. That's where Pit Boost will be activated in the race for the drivers. They'll be taking a pit stop in the E-Prix this afternoon. And let's see what they're going to be like as we head out onto the circuit. As we say, the hazy cloud of yesterday has been replaced by a rather low looming grey cloud, and as you can see, a 99% probability of rain. It's wetter than a submarine's number plate out there this morning, unfortunately. Really not nice for the drivers to have to contend with. And I wonder what it's going to mean as we head into FP2 here, Katie, for these drivers. How do you think they're going to approach this session?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, I think it's going to be an interesting day, especially when you don't have runoff. You know, we saw in practice yesterday already, there's not much room, obviously, with Taylor Barnard's incident with the wall. I think, you know, we all know that there's not much grip either, especially in the wet. It's very specialised to be able to drive with these tyres in those conditions. Here we have Norman trying to wipe the water off his shoes as he's getting in the car.
I thought he was stretching his hamstrings out there for a second. It's a nice bit of yoga before you jump into the car. Special livery on the Nissan here for this weekend. You can see that it's like an 8-bit style Sakura graphic sort of thing that they've got going on there. Basically, they've got a flash game that's been launched with. I used to love flash games on the PC, but essentially it's a bit of a collaboration, of course, paying homage to the fantastic video game industry they've got here in Japan, and you can go online and play that game as well. And the green light comes on, and we see Oliver Rowland lighting it up as he jumps out of the garage and onto the circuit in the sopping wet conditions here in Tokyo.
Yeah, he was trying to get a bit of a dry track, which is the only bit in his garage to get some temperature on the tires. But yeah, that shows how committed he is.
I see his engineers lining that up, trying to move the cameraman out of the way. I knew something was going to happen.
Goodness me. Well, you can see a lot of standing water as the drivers head out onto the track for the first time. We have had a wet session here previously. That was FP2 last year, funnily enough, when we had wet track, but nowhere near this level. This is Rowland, though. sliding his way out and
I wonder
causing...
if Norman was expecting that.
I was just about to say, I wonder if they communicated that one. Well, there we go. You can see the rain coming down in a fairly heavy intensity here as well. Of course, qualifying, in all likelihood, Andre, is going to be wet as well. So do you think this session is going to have quite a fair bit of relevance in terms of how the teams and drivers are going to approach it and set the cars up?
Yeah, definitely. Every minute you spend out there learning, trying to figure out the tire pressures, if you want to go on high pressure or a bit less, try to find some grip, make sure the systems of the car function well. You know, the cars have a bit of traction control or anti-locking, but this, yeah, it's very, very low grip, so it's going to be very tricky and difficult for the drivers, and you don't want to push too much, because if you crash, it is not much time to fix it for qualifying. So yeah, build the confidence slowly and try to find some speed in the setup.
Yeah, absolutely. You can see this is down at the chicane of turns 10 and 11. This is the Jaguar of Nick Cassidy going through, closely followed by Antonio Felix da Costa. And just coming on towards the start-finish straight there as well. It's interesting, actually, because there's a lot of different surfaces on this circuit. And you can see Mitch Evans here sliding, coming down the start-finish straight into the first corner.
Yeah, the drivers can barely go flat out on the straight line. So it's really managing the risk and trying to somehow stay alive on the track. Try to get temperature on the tires. You see the drivers steering extra, putting extra steering lock to try to get some slip and some friction on the tires to get temperature, because it's very difficult in these slow speeds to get some energy in the tires and make them work, because they need a certain temperature for the rubber to function, but it will be very hard for them to make these tires work and to get any grip at all. So but yeah, anything would help. Like I think they boost the pressures a lot, so to try to work the tires.
Yeah, this is on the run out of turns 2 into turn 3. It's actually been reprofiled. Last year it was a jump, essentially, and drivers and teams were complaining about it because it was causing a lot of technical issues with the battery on the landing and so on. So it's been reprofiled, resurfaced to try and remove that. But the car's still moving around quite a lot on that compression going down into turn 3. So expect to see them fighting it, especially as we get into qualifying and the duels when we're in four-wheel drive and attack mode. We saw wet weather, of course, a fortnight ago, Casey, when we were in Monaco, and the cars were dancing around all over the place. So there's not a lot of aerodynamic grip with these Gen 3 Evo machines, so expect to see them fighting it, I reckon.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you can see it here already. And look at the visibility as well from the spray. We have this rain later, it's going to be crazy on the start. But yeah, they've had the experience of it in Monaco. They'll have all been, you know, learning a lot, I guess, from that as well with their engineers and trying to create the best setup for those conditions. The race was actually drying quite a lot in Monaco towards the end of the race. It started off pretty wet and then the conditions got a bit drier. But I think today we might be in for a fully wet race by the looks of it right now.
Yeah, I think you could be absolutely right with that. In terms of lap times yesterday, by the way, we were down to 1 minute 12, which was some 8 seconds quicker. That's Buemi having a moment coming through turn 16. Not the first driver we've seen have a moment through there. You can see he was trying to get the front rotated, massive amount of lock through the left-hander, and then it snapped into oversteer. Sort of a karting style line that when you're running on slicks, you try and get the front understeer to get it turned in.
He's just trying to put some slip angle on the tire, to put some temperature in, like I mentioned before, like friction to try to get the rubber a bit softer when it's warm, but I don't think it's going to happen much. But we saw it, like for Sam Byrne, for example, in Monaco in turn 1. I had lunch with him yesterday. He said it just tiny bit locked up, and he said the car didn't slow down at all. So it's really, really tricky for the guys out there. As soon as you lock up, you're going straight. So it's a lot of risk management, and it's very difficult to play with the car and try to stay alive basically, and somehow find pace at the same time.
Yeah, it's going to be a challenge, isn't it?
How much of that is down, obviously, from you driving in Formula E for years, how much of that is down to driver feel in the wet versus the setup that, you know, the engineers can give you?
Yeah, it's always a package, obviously, but here it's all about the tires. Like, I think the setup of the car matters a bit, but you try to maybe soften it, or but yeah, it's if you find the right tire pressures and somehow the systems as well, because you know when you hit the brakes, you want the systems to do exactly what you want, the right brake balance at the same time. Yeah, and any little bit will help, because if you find something, the delta can be quite big.
Well, 34 minutes to go of free practice 2 in the wet weather here in Tokyo. If you haven't seen the news, there was a terrible fire down at Bicester Motor, which sadly resulted in 3 fatalities. It's on the site of the Neon McLaren Formula E team. Let's go down and catch up with Saunders, who's with team principal for that outfit, Ian James, and get his thoughts.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, we were very sad to see the news from Bicester yesterday. What can you tell us? Is there an update from the team side?
Yeah, well, Bicester Motion is the headquarters of McLaren Electric Racing, and somewhere that we've called home for the last 3 years. So it was a real shock when we woke up yesterday morning to the news of the fire. And then throughout the day, as the information came through, we learned that tragically 3 people had lost their lives, 2 of the very brave firefighters and 1 of the Bicester Motion community as well. So it's been a massive shock for the team.
Absolutely a shock for the whole motorsport world and everybody involved. Devastating news to hear. In terms of operationally, with the setup that you have there, has that affected things?
I think first and foremost, I mean, it's our thoughts go out to the families of those that have lost their lives, but also we understand that there's a couple of the brave firefighters that are all still in hospital, so we wish them a speedy recovery as well. Here for the weekend, that's obviously secondary, but we've been able to find solutions. We're not able to go back on site where we'd normally run the remote operations from, but thanks to the support again from the FIA and the community here, we've been able to get up and running. So I don't expect a huge impact here in Tokyo this weekend.
Well, thank you for the extra information, and again, yeah, thoughts to everybody involved in that horrible tragedy. Just looking at the garage now, you can see that Taylor's managed to make it out for the session, so give us an update there. Repairs all went swimmingly, I see.
Yeah, I think Taylor was okay after yesterday, a bruised ego, but nothing more serious than that. So the guys have done, again, for the second event in a row, a phenomenal job to turn the car around. We've changed the rear end, so the new power unit has got on one of our spares, so it's not leading to any kind of penalties in that regard. Rest of the car checked out okay, a bit of superficial damage, but given the size of the shunt, we got away reasonably lightly. And I think speaking with Taylor last night, we were very much of the mindset that it's not ideal. He said at the beginning he wanted to get as much running as possible on what is a new track for him. But today's a completely different day. We can see out there it's very, very wet. So I think in that regard, it's not really put him too much on the back foot. He's as confident as he ever has been. So we'll see what both he and Sam can do this weekend.
It certainly is very, very tricky conditions out there, just looking how the visibility and the spray. What does this mean for today? Because we waited almost a year for a wet race, and now we've had 2 in a row.
Yeah, it's Formula E, isn't it? I remember our first season, or certainly my first season in season 5, and that was the first one we really saw any kind of wet running and wet weather, and it was very wet that year as well. So, you know, the drivers, the teams, we're used to it. It definitely adds a new challenge into the game, and I think this weekend not only have we got pit boost in the mix, but I think we've probably got a dry race tomorrow. So we're going to see 2 very, very different races, 2 very different strategies being deployed, but. You know, that's what we're here for. It's going to be entertaining.
Thanks, Ian.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Saunders. Thank you to Ian James there as well. 30 minutes to go in free practice 2 as we see the drivers negotiating this very treacherous Tokyo circuit. Delighted to be joined, though, in the commentary box by reserve driver for Mahindra, Jordan King. Jordan, brilliant weekend for the team a couple of weeks ago. Nick de Vries getting the team's first podium since Mexico 2023. What are you thinking for this weekend?
Yeah, well, it's been a long journey for us to get that podium after a couple of seasons. But now everyone's feeling quite confident. We've got ourselves into a good place after a less than ideal season last year. So, yeah, not counting our chicks too early, but we're in a good place. I think we can challenge consistently now. We've shown. So, yeah, fingers crossed. But as we've just seen, well, on screen, but also throughout Formula E, kind of all bets are off depending on what happens to the weather.
So you're a reserve driver for Mahindra. Talk me through what your role is going into a weekend like this. Have you done any sort of wet weather simulation testing, or is it possible to do that?
I mean, wet weather simulation is almost impossible to do because you never know how wet it's going to be and then how much grip you've got. You know, as Andre was just saying, how difficult it is to turn tyres on, generate the grip. here in Tokyo, we've got 5 or 6 different tarmacs around the circuit. It's bumpy, there's white lines, so simulating what that will be is difficult. But there's still a lot of pre-event work that goes in. Formula E, you've got very different conditions depending whether it's qualifying or race. So you've got to try and go through all of your energy maps, your push laps. You've obviously got 350 for qualifying if you get through to the duels, 300. So there's lots of variance and making sure that all of those are ticked off before you get to the race weekend.
Obviously, the 350 is new for this year. How much time have you had driving in a 350? Because imagine if you were to step in for a quali session.
Yeah.
Would that be a...
Well, luckily for me, actually, when we first went to 350 with this new Gen 3 Evo, I did the first 3 or 4 days testing in it. And actually with these new tyres as well, I ended up doing a couple of the tyre tests as well. So, yeah, I like to think I know what's going on. But actually in the wet, it makes even bigger difference. As you hear when they're in 350, the perfect timing from Antonio there as he lights up the rears. The car balance on throttle is really difficult with just 300 on the rear. But as soon as you go 350 and you pick up some front-wheel drive, you gain so much more stability. So actually the lap time delta in the wet is greater in 350 than it is in 300.
Yeah, we did see a huge gulf in times, didn't we, in Monaco, you know, a fortnight ago between attack mode and non-attack mode. I'm really keen to see what it's going to look like when we get into the race this afternoon, because of course we've got pit boost coming into that one as well. So we haven't had a wet pit boost race, and the probability is that it's going to look like that. So I wonder what it's going to look like and how the teams are going to adapt their strategies, you know, according to these conditions here. Oh, that's Jean-Eric Vergne into the wall down at turn 16. Slightly less of an impact than we saw from Taylor Barnard 24 hours ago. But he's unsurprisingly back in the pit lane. Have a team radio here.
Hit the wall slightly.
Okay, does everything feel straight?
So Vergne in the wall then and back into the pit lane. But yeah, just going back to that point there, Jordan, what do you think we should be expecting this afternoon? A wet race, pit boost, attack modes and so on. There's a lot of variables now to think about.
I think the main variable to watch out for is yellow flags and safety cars. If they start flying out around the pit stop time when we're coming in for pit boost, it's going to be a little bit, as we now talk of full course yellow, look, perfect time. It's almost like they're listening to us. So yeah, if this is thrown out around the pit boost time, it's really going to change people's strategies, and if you can end up pitting under full course yellow, it's worth a lot of time. Safety car is also worth a lot of time. Full course yellow is worth more. So yeah, I think watch as we saw with Nico Müller in Monaco.
Yeah, I was just about to say.
He managed to get in under the safety car, or full course yellow. Unfortunately, he had another issue, but he was 15 seconds in the lead or whatever it was, as we see my teammate here going straight on into turn 1. So quick spin around, and that was in his 350 as well. So he was about to try and do a really quick lap time.
Is that one of the only places with runoff to actually test the braking to the limit on this track?
It's probably one of the better places, turn 1, also the turn 10. This chicane here we're coming up to, you can cut, if you go straight on there, there's an extra little chicane, as we see Nick again. So yeah, there's a couple of places, but not many. It is super tight, super bumpy, and yeah, really high risk, as we've already seen Jean-Eric Vergne hitting the wall, and then Taylor obviously doing some big damage yesterday.
Yeah, we saw Nick de Vries ending up going off the track in qualifying for Monaco, didn't we, a fortnight ago, and also Oliver Rowland as well. One of the most bizarre dual things you'll ever see, where two drivers both went off, and it was a case of who rejoined quickest at the end of that one, which saw Rowland going through into the finals. Anyway, let's go down to Saunders and catch up with team principal for Jaguar TCS Racing, James Barclay. Saunders, we saw Nick Cassidy getting onto the podium a fortnight ago for the first time this season. What's James making of their season at pretty much the halfway stage of 2025 now?
Yes, Tom. I mean, the conditions out there are incredibly tricky, James. We've seen Nick Cassidy and now Mitch Evans both clip with the wall. What can you tell us?
Yes, unfortunately, Nick just had ran a bit wide and hit the wall, same place as Taylor did yesterday, and damaged her right rear wishbone. So we're just going to try and see if we can get that turned around. and getting back out. He was feeling very confident though, and enjoying the conditions. And Mitch was doing a really good job up to P4, and unfortunately just had a spin and got into the wall backwards. So just see if we can turn that around. So it's really slippery out there, the drivers are saying, and very, very tricky. So yeah, these aren't easy conditions, and I don't envy them in the car right now. It's not easy.
What are your radars and reports saying about the weather continuing for today? Is it going to get worse, similar?
Yeah, I mean, it looks like it's here to stay all day, to be really honest. The key question is whether it subsides closer to the race and we have a drying track later, but to be honest, it looks like it's set in for the day.
Thanks, James.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much indeed, Saunders. Thank you to James. Yeah, weather set to continue for the majority of the day, seemingly as well. So didn't see Nick Cassidy ending up in the wall there, but a shame for him, but he's now back in the pit lane. Hopefully he can get that sorted and get some running in the last 20 minutes of this session here. On board here with championship leader Oliver Rowland. Pretty much whatever he's going to do this weekend, he's not necessarily guaranteed to come out of it with the lead of the championship, but he's got a very good probability of doing so. 48 points the advantage he has.
So what I was saying earlier about 350 to 300, Antonio's the first representative lap time, and he went 4 seconds faster than what he did in 300, going to 350. I'm sure the gap won't be quite that much, but it gives you an example of the difference between 300 to 350 in these sorts of conditions.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking at Rowland here on a attack mode lap, you can see that with the magenta lights illuminating the car at the moment. It's currently 11th quickest. Nissans were looking pretty handy here yesterday, Katie. Natto was fastest. Rowland was third at the end of FP1 as well. Good for them, of course, being their home weekend. Do you think they can continue that form, though, in these conditions?
I think so. I mean, yeah, Natto, he's had quite a... I don't like to use the word unlucky in motorsport because we all know that, you know, there's so many variables in it, but he has had quite a few different technical problems this year. He's been quick, obviously. He was on pole in Miami, and then obviously didn't manage to, with the penalties and everything, with the chaos in the race, didn't manage to convert it. But yeah, he was quick in practice yesterday. I think he was a couple of tenths ahead of Max Günther. We were just looking at the timing there when Saunders was talking, and there's a big gap to yesterday's times in the dry, obviously, being in the wet today, so I think it's going to be very different to yesterday's conditions. But then I think tomorrow is actually meant to be a bit drier, so free practice 1 will probably be more beneficial practice for tomorrow.
Yeah, I think you could be right with that. About 20 seconds off the pace from what we saw yesterday. We're in the low 1:12. Just a notification coming up on our timing screen about Dan Tictum. He's under investigation for over-speeding under the full course yellow, so we'll see what the stewards deem there. But the full course yellow was brought out, as we saw, for debris on the circuit, courtesy of Byrne's trip to the barrier down at turn 16. Sebastian Buemi fighting the car as he comes through turn 4, the most recent winner in Formula E. 78 races between victories, a gap of just over 5 years, something along the lines of that. Really, really impressive job from Sebastian Buemi, actually, Jordan. I thought he did really well, and the team were delighted with that. Their first win since London a couple of years ago also. Yeah,
it was the mixed conditions, starting wet, drying circuit, and you could clearly see different teams had different strategies on setup and tyre pressures to who was quick at what point of the race, and they seemed to get it pretty much spot on. They took their attack mode at the right times and cycled themselves to the front of the field, and I think he said, I never thought I was going to win again. So to win in Monaco for your never going to win again race is a pretty good one.
Yeah, it's his third win actually on the streets of Monaco. Very impressive from him. Just had a notification saying that Cassie's just jumping back in the car in the Jaguar as well, so that's good for him because he'll be able to get at least 20 minutes left of the session, so some crucial running there for him.
Yeah, practice is quite long, isn't it?
Yeah, 40 minutes now. It's gone up 10 minutes from last year. I mean, I'll be honest, 10 minutes more in conditions like this, not exactly ideal for a driver, but important as we head into qualifying, considering we're expecting the weather to stay pretty much the same. Good to see Barnard also doing pretty well. He's up into second place following his trip into the wall. Kiro were quick last weekend as well in Monaco.
So expect rain to pick up in around 7-8 minutes.
Yeah, words that no racing driver wants to get from their race engineer, that the intensity of the rain is set to increase. Dan Tictum, standout performer for me last time out in Monaco, led both the practice sessions, was really unlucky to not get into the fight for pole position. There was a mistake from the team also on one of the days in qualifying, and essentially he went out to do his dual run and was only in 300 kilowatts of power as opposed to 350. and it put him on the back foot, really, and then in the race it all sort of came unravelled for him. But the signs are there for me that he's starting to make the progress that he's hoping for, because let's be fair to Dan Tictum, he's not exactly had the best couple of years, and not necessarily all his own fault either.
Yeah, I mean, he was saying in Monaco that when it was raining, he was excited and thought it was his day, the conditions that he likes to drive in, so I'm sure he's going to be thinking the same today. He was 6th fastest, I think, yesterday in the dry and free practice. It's always there and thereabouts, though, isn't he, at the minute?
Yeah, it certainly seems to be. This is down into turn 16, on board with Robin Freins. You can see him fighting the car, understeer, oversteer, and all sorts of angles as he brings it through to the final couple of corners. He's pretty handy in the wet, is Robin Freins. What's this lap time going to look, though, for him? He's currently 13th quickest in the Envision. It will be an improvement as he goes up just behind his teammate, Sebastian Buemi, into 6th fastest. Have a look at an onboard then here as he's going through turn 9. You can see the amount of lock he's having to put through the car. And then fighting for control all the way down. Good to see there for him. As we look now at Nick de Vries, Mortara's just popped himself up into 2nd quickest. What's the mood like in the camp this weekend, Jordan? Are you full of optimism? Do you think a repeat of what we saw in Monaco is possible, or are you sort of staying a bit more cautious?
I think there's a few tired faces with all the jet lag.
Echoed here in the commentary box as well, I'd like to add.
A few people waking up in the middle of the night. But no, we're all pretty happy, to be honest. We're, I suppose, quietly confident, let's say. We're pleased that the progress has been made from last season to this season, but it's a tough championship. There's no bad team, if there's such thing. There's no bad driver, again, if there's such thing. And it's tricky. You know, we've seen very good teams and good drivers seemingly get it wrong some weekends and then get it right the following weekend. So we've built some good consistency. We've managed to score points every weekend this year. So yeah, more of that, we hope. But it's, yeah, all bets are off. I don't want to say suddenly this is going to be the weekend that we do something special, because it's a tough championship.
Yeah, it's great to see a resurgence of Mahindra, though, like you say, compared to where you guys were. You know, last year here you did quite well with Mortara getting quite up there in qualifying. It was unlucky to be disqualified at the end of the race due to a technical problem, but yeah, for 2025 it has been a real step forward in terms of that track performance.
Yeah, it has.
Tictum here, we're just staying on board with his driver's eye for the rest of this lap, and he is just fighting the car all the way around. I think tyre pressures are going to be pretty important going into qualifying, and I think that they're going to be playing around with it. That seems to be the big story when we were in Monaco, as teams just trying to find how to get those tyres in the right operating window.
Yeah, but also he's in 350 here, and he's still struggling so much on traction, even with the 4-wheel drive. So yeah, if we got an onboard like this when he's in 350, I think it'd look even more scary. But it just shows how hard it is actually with the changing tarmac conditions and white lines. Every time they hit a white line, there's a big stab of oversteer. But he's about to jump up the timing screen here with 2 green sectors. Yeah, slightly wide into the penultimate corner there, which just dropped him a little bit of time. He ends up going 7th quickest in the Cupra Kiro. Where is his teammate? David Beckmann's down in 18th fastest at the moment as we look through into the chicane of turns 10 and 11. Big curb there on the inside, which could upset the car. And it just pushes you really close to the wall on the outside. I remember that from last year. They haven't brought the wall back at all, so it is quite tight going through there. You've got to be a bit careful, especially as we head into the dual stages of qualifying. Let's have a look at Jake Dennis coming out through into the left-hander.
My biggest limitation is like just the rear completely falling over on itself in 7 and 8, and then traction.
So the rear is completely falling over on itself. What does he mean by that, Jordan?
Well, I'd be surprised it's down to load in these conditions, because there's no grip, but you know, normally a coming like that would mean once it's under the heavy load, you turn in, it starts to grip up, but then just gives up on you. So yeah, it's probably just absolute lack of grip, lots of oversteer in the car. Mid-corner that he goes in, it feels okay, and then it just gives up on him mid-corner, and then he can't get out, complaining of traction as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Just looking here then at Pascal Wehrlein as he's slowing himself down, trying to find a bit of room through into here.
Did you see the message on the halo there?
I did, yeah. I love the halo message from Porsche. They're a fantastic little Easter egg.
Each driver wrote the other driver's message this weekend.
Brilliant.
Did they?
Yeah, so that's why it's
Wasabo makes
passive aggressive.
A little bit of gamesmanship between those two drivers. Jordan, thank you so much for joining us here in the commentary. It was an absolute pleasure. Good luck to yourself and to Mahindra this weekend. We'll get Andre back into the box as we look at Taylor Barnard in a full 350 attack mode lap for this session. Currently fourth quickest he is at the moment, about a second or so off the pace set by Oliver Rowland. But track conditions not set to improve. We heard that the rain is likely to start getting heavier from about this point onwards, really. So I wonder what the last 14 minutes of this session are going to look like. Andre, you were sat just behind Jordan as we look at Taylor Barnard going down the escape road at turns 10 and 11. I have to say the conditions not looking particularly brilliant. If anything, the rain seems to be increasing again.
Yeah, it just keeps coming down and down. Maybe the ideal apex and the line, there might be a bit less water from the cars, but it's actually raining that much that it's, yeah, the track conditions won't improve. If you see the lap times improving, it's mostly the drivers getting used to the conditions, finding the limits like Taylor just did here. Luckily in an area where you can escape, but yeah, yeah, immediately if you brake 1 or 2 meters too late, a bit too hard, and you're off this. The grip is just so little, and yeah, we will probably see a bit more of this going on during the session.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Yeah, Barnard, as you say, taken to the escape road. Verline's just been given a black and white flag there for driving unnecessarily slowly. We saw him a few moments ago just slowing down to try and make a little bit of room on one of his cool-down laps. As we look at Jake Hughes in the Maserati, he was complaining at the end of FP1 yesterday. He wasn't happy with the balance of the car. It was the same story that he suffered from in Monaco. I caught up with him a couple of times, and he was saying that he couldn't get the grip and the feeling of the car under braking. It just plagued him all weekend. Currently 12th quickest, just behind his teammate by a few hundredths of a second, Stoffel Van Dorn. But yesterday Van Dorn looked pretty quick. He was 5th fastest at the end of FP1.
Yeah, the Stellantis powertrain looks like it has good potential here if you get it right. Like some other cars from this powertrain hasn't performed that much, but 2 cars were doing well. So it's really about getting everything right and put it together. But we just saw Jake Hughes trying the limits also on his in-lap to explore a bit more. Maybe, you know, you can take that risk and see where the limits are.
No doubt about it. There's Cyril Blaze on the right-hand side of your picture, team principal for Maserati MSG. We ride on board now with Sam Bird.
Okay, Sam, most of the lap is there or thereabouts. Our biggest loss, turns 2 to turns 5, is 9 tenths. Turns 2 to turn 5.
9 tenths of a second lost in 3 corners is not ideal at all. We've got a yellow flag out down at turn 15. That's in the final sector. We've seen quite a few drivers making mistakes as Nick Cassidy just runs it a little bit deep down into there.
Yeah, the thing is...
that's why. That's, sorry, that's David Beckmann that's come to a stop on the escape road, and I think he's trying to rotate the car around there, or has he just spun straight off onto the escape road? Oh, he's lost the rear going in, hasn't he?
The other difficulty which happens with the drivers once they go on full attack mode, they arrive so much faster due to the better traction and a bit of the extra power, obviously, but it changes completely your braking point. So they have to brake a bit earlier, so it's 2 complete different references, and it's very difficult in these conditions to find both limits on the different power modes.
Yep, and Beckmann just exploring the limits, as well as Zane Maloney there down at the first corner as he runs on. Beckmann still trying to do a 3-pointer here down at turn 15.
Oh, he hasn't read his driver manual how to reverse, maybe.
It's not actually that easy to get these cars because they got the.
You say that, but then do you remember Tictum in Monaco?
That is a good point. Yeah, but he rotated around trying to find reverse in these. It's
he's not the kind of driver that looks for reverse, huh, Tictum?
He's got too much practice, I think, misspent youth maybe.
He likes the drifting.
Embracing the Tokyo drift culture. As we look at drivers just making their way through. The rain is definitely increased. There's a red flag now because the car's still stopped. So David Beckmann not able to get the car recovered, seemingly, and the red flag has come out with just under 10 minutes left of the session, which means an early end to the Germans' FP2, denying him some crucial running ahead of qualifying later on this morning. Only an hour and a half or so to go until we get qualifying for the broadcast underway. The qualifying gets underway in just under 2 hours' time, 20 past 10 local time here this morning. But the clock still counts down here, doesn't it, as well, with this red flag. So even though the session has come to sort of an end at the moment, as it were, it's been neutralised, that clock will still count down. So depending on how long this is, they may add a few extra minutes on, but it's a really tight turnaround. So hopefully whatever it is there for Beckmann isn't a terminal issue.
Yeah,
any running.
I'm curious to see what happened, because he was looking at his right rear. Maybe he had a contact with the wall, and that maybe affected his drive shaft or something like that, that we maybe missed out, because it looked like he went straight or overshot the braking. But then, yeah, it's probably looking on this right rear for a reason.
Well, the microfibers out down at Neil McLaren. It must have been down to Costco to get a job lot of them, I'm sure, before this weekend, because they're going to need them to help the drivers be able to see. Because you can see there, as we ride on board here with Günther, there is a lot of water, not only in the air but also on the circuit. And well, especially as we head into the group stages of qualifying, it's tricky enough at this circuit to find clear track. We saw a few drivers getting balked on fast laps in the dry yesterday, and I wonder what it's going to look like when we head with 11 cars out on track in the group stages in the wet.
Jake's face says it all there, doesn't it? Really?
It does. Certainly does. Zane Maloney here down at, I think it's the first lap. Oh, and he's coming together with the Mahindra there of Nick de Vries.
Can you check the right rear, because Maloney crashed into me, and the right-hand mirror, someone pushed it up.
So that's actually down to the final chicane there, that incident between Maloney and de Vries. What happened there, Andre?
Well, I think drivers were trying to make a gap to launch the lap and to have better visibility ahead, but it was quite good to see actually that there was a warning flag from the race director, because I'm sure the drivers have discussed that in the drivers briefing to try to avoid cars driving unnecessarily slow or abusing a bit to get a clear lap, because that really bunches things up and it's actually quite dangerous. So it's you don't have much visibility in the last sector approaching the last two corners. So yeah, this is exactly what happens when one driver does that, and then there's the chain reaction of it.
Absolutely. So the clock continues to count down with the red flag now out in this session. The rain intensity, as I said, has been increasing quite steadily over the last 10 minutes or so. The track now, I would say, is at its wettest at this point in the session. And there is an interesting point to mention as we go into qualifying as well, because if this rain does increase and they can't run qualifying for whatever reason, the results of this session will determine the grid for the E-Prix this afternoon.
Yeah, that's right. But I think they will be able to run it, because if they're driving now with that much rain, I don't think it can get any worse. So I don't think we will have a problem qualifying to run the cars.
Well, famous last words. If that did happen, then Andretti would be disappointed, because they'd be right down on the final row of the grid. Muller just behind his teammate Jake Dennis. Also, the likes of the two Jaguars down there 16th and 18th position, respectively. Wehrlein down in 15th. That would be a properly jumbled up order, wouldn't it?
Yeah, you don't want that. But it's interesting to see the Japanese fans are so committed. I've been racing here years, and then sometimes it just rains so much, and they just stay there in the grandstands, and they're committed to watch it, and they have the equipment, you know.
Where do they get those ponchos, though? Because they look like the most waterproof things you've ever seen.
Yeah, well, they're used to it here. It rains a lot sometimes in Japan, so they have all the equipment here. So it doesn't stop them from coming to watch the race.
No, they are hugely passionate, the Japanese fans, and very respectful as well. It was interesting walking around with yourself and James yesterday, because obviously you guys raced in Japan for a good number of years, and you can barely take 2 or 3 steps without somebody approaching you.
Yeah, we still have our fans here, and yeah, I have also my fan, like my super fan, I call her, Sana. She even comes around the world to watch me race in WEC or everywhere. She spends all her savings coming to watch the races, and people don't understand. And I'm like, yeah, they're just real fans. So and she's here as well, and even though I'm not racing.
As I say, she can't wait for your sabbatical to come to an end. This is the incident there between Maloney and Nick de Vries coming through the final corner. Clearly a miscommunication going on there between those two drivers. The upshot is that De Vries possibly sustained a little bit of damage from that. You can see he was busy minding his own business and entered stage left. Zane Maloney, and a bit of a crunch of carbon fibre going through that final chicane. Meanwhile, I'm trying to work out who we're riding on board with here. Not that easy to tell in conditions like this. It is Nick De Vries, isn't it, I think, actually. He's going to have a whack on the right in a second, isn't he?
If you're wondering what these LED lights are, they are not Christmas lights. It's the activity of the anti-locking systems and also the traction control. So the more they light up, the more the system is active.
There's a huge amount of information on the dashboard for a driver looking at that screen. I mean, obviously I'm sat here in a commentary box, I'm nice and dry. They're out there with adrenaline surging through them on a racetrack, driving at 150 kilometers an hour or whatever it might happen to be. What information can you actually take in?
Oh, there's so much going on the steering. You have to know that, for example, for one corner, you can have more than 10 different settings.
I don't really care about the 0.01 optimization. We need to be ready just to be first in line.
Yeah.
Why we have a canister with air, I have no idea.
Okay, so a bit of team radio there for Cassidy. Just talking about how we're going to optimise the end of this session. We've just had confirmation the session will not be extended following that red flag. So 3 minutes to go. What are they going to be? They're going to get time for one flying lap now, aren't they, really?
No, again, it's just to try to maybe get a feel for the modifications they did. You know, during a red flag like that, it's a good moment for trying some different setups. Have a look at the data because probably you know, you try to maximize track time, but an intervention like that gives you the opportunity to try something else and get out there and put in some laps as quick as possible.
I fear Nick De Vries' session may have come to an early end. You can see the car being pushed out of the garage here and then just being pushed into the pit lane. So I wonder if they might use these last few minutes as an attack mode practice, as it were, sorry, pit boost practice rather, for the race later on this afternoon instead of getting some running on the circuit. Maybe that's how his session is going to come to an end as we look at Nick Cassidy, currently down in 16th at the moment for Jaguar TCS Racing, just behind Pascal Wehrlein, the reigning world champion. Cassidy, of course, his first podium in Monaco a fortnight ago, and he has had a torrid season so far in Formula E. There's make no bones about it. Down in 13th in the driver's standings, and he's got an awful mountain to climb if he's going to bring himself back into contention for the second half of this year.
See the cars aquaplaning on the straight line, and Da Costa launching a 350 attack mode lap.
There's quite a lot of standing water in some areas, isn't there, on the track? Be out there with a broom sweeping it out in a minute.
Yeah, the rain has definitely gotten heavier, no doubt about it. It's going to get to the point, I think, soon where you don't want a car with 4 wheels. You're going to need a boat with 2 oars, I reckon, to try and navigate this Tokyo circuit.
But the next time they're going to be out is going to be 300 for the group stages qualifying as well, so...
Yeah, absolutely, and they'll be wishing they had 4-wheel drive,
yeah.
I'm sure, to try and pull them out of these corners in the traction zones. See the car still dancing around here for Da Costa as he makes his way through turn 9. I mean, that's a fast and fearless corner in the dry. In the wet conditions where the car's squirming about all over the place, I can't imagine what it must be like from a driver's perspective just to try and harry that car through there. Making his way now through the second sector, out of turns 12, and heading in towards the fastest part of the circuit. This is where he challenged Jake Dennis for the lead on the final lap going into turn 15. A very tricky braking zone, and then coming in towards turn 16, 17 and 18, the final corners on this lap. This is where we've seen so many drivers make mistakes. You flick it through this left-hander, but the track drops away, and you can get a big snap of oversteer there. Look at the standing water. It's an absolute deluge on this circuit, isn't it now?
Yeah, I don't think the drivers will be able to improve any lap time in those conditions, and also with the red flag, any bit of temperature they had in the tires dropped, and it takes time to get it back. So yeah, I think I wouldn't push too hard at the moment because you don't want to hit the wall and compromise your qualifying with trying to repair the car. Yeah,
a couple of improvements coming through at the end of the session. I think Burns just popped himself up into 8th quickest. Gunther also making improvement for DS Penske. Just a couple of seconds still away, though, from the quickest time set by Oliver Rowland. Checker flag now is out at the end of free practice 2. I'll be very surprised if anyone's going to be able to topple Oliver Rowland.
And if you want to reduce the diff settings based on your feeling, do it. Set the diff as you want. Minus 4 for push lap seems to have been a good baseline, but your call.
There's double yellow down at the penultimate corner as well. Whether that's a driver that's slowed or whether they've come to blows with the barrier remains to be seen. Could just be a bit of debris perhaps down there as well. Verline, though, is going to end this session 17th quickest for Tag Heuer Porsche, which is not where he will have wanted to be going into qualifying in just over an hour's time here.
Yeah, the Porsche powertrain cars are struggling a bit.
That's why we've got the double yellow. It's Zane Maloney that's come to a stop down at turn 17. So the second time we've seen him involved in some kind of drama in this session following the early contact we saw with him and Nico Müller. We've heard from team radio that he is okay, so whatever's gone on there for Maloney, we're not 100% sure at the moment. Hopefully we'll get a replay and work out why he's come to a stop, whether it's contact with the barrier or whether it's a technical problem for the Barbadian. But the session does come to an end then. It will be Oliver Rowland and it will be again Nissan's first and third at the end of FP2 here. So repeating the same form in very different conditions 24 hours after FP1.
Yeah, they've got the full package this weekend. I think that's what every driver wants to come out of practice like. They know from practice yesterday that they can be quick tomorrow in the dry race, and obviously here they're going to want to replicate this in qualifying, but it's not easy to do that in the wet and the dry. It's very different conditions today to yesterday.
Yeah, it shows they have a really good package, and I believe their systems must be quite strong, because in these conditions, you know, everyone has the same tires, the same power, the same, let's say, general grip. And if you manage to get the systems right, meaning like when the driver gets on the brakes and he can trust that he won't lock up, or that when he goes on power, that the traction control works the best and all works really well together, it helps in the dry as well, but it shows in the wet even more. So yeah, I believe they've done some really good steps in that direction.
Yeah, the team certainly working to the maximum of their potential, no doubt about it, for Nissan as well. And a weekend where they'll want to go particularly well, because of course home weekend for Nissan here in Japan. I imagine there'll be some shareholders and you know, people on the board that are probably coming to this weekend. You want to make a good impression in front of the corporate members of the Nissan team here this weekend. So then FP2 comes to a wet and wild conclusion. A late red flag there following the incident we saw for David Beckmann, curtailing a lot of the drivers running at the end of that one. We also saw some problems for Zane Maloney in the Lola Yamaha apt machine. As we look at the drivers now doing their practice starts on the start-finish straight here. And those 5 red lights will come on, and of course in the race they'll be moving away with four-wheel drive power down towards that first corner. Very tightened first sector. It's actually been opened up a little bit for this year. The whole of the first sector, effectively from turns 1 to turn 7, have been widened a little bit. Let's have a look at what happened to Maloney. He's going to go to the wall here at turn 16. That's a heavy impact into the barrier as well.
Yeah. Rear right.
Yeah, Maloney with a snap of oversteer, almost identical to what Barnard did in FP1 yesterday.
Just that the wall was a bit more slippery, so maybe the impact was a bit less sticky. But yeah, also the speeds were definitely much lower. But the team should be able to repair that hopefully in time.
Yeah, with a bit of luck, hopefully not too much damage there for Zane Maloney, because if it's a powertrain or a drive shaft, that's a big job, especially for a powertrain. Drive shaft, not quite so much, but we'll wait and see what that looks like for Zane Maloney. As we said, quite a short turnaround between now and qualifying, about an hour and a half until we get quali underway here in Japan. So the team will be working quite frantically to try and make sure that car is ready to go for qualifying here this morning.
Very important this time, the start practice for the race. I think you can jump good positions if you have good setting.
Yeah, absolutely. important for the drivers. Let's get confirmation, though, of the results at the end of free practice 2. Once again, it is Nissan on top. It is now Oliver Rowland who leads Edo Mortara in the Mahindra. Great end to the second practice session there ahead of his teammate Norman Nato. First and third for the Nissan boys yesterday in FP1, and the same here in FP2 as well. Taylor Barnard, he ended FP1 in the barrier, but FP2 he's up 4th quickest for Neon McLaren ahead of Nick de Vries. Last time out, winner Sebastian Buemi for Envision in 6th place ahead of Tictum, Byrne, Gunther and Fright. A few drivers who improved at the end of that session. Da Costa down there in 11th place ahead of Bird, Cassidy, Van Dorn, Hughes, Maloney, of course, who ended the session in the barrier and brought out a yellow flag in the dying stages of that ahead of reigning world champion Verline, then Degrassi, Evans, Beckmann, Muller and Dennis for Andretti down in 21st and 22nd. So some big hitters right down the order at the end of free practice 2. And given the track conditions as well, we'll see what it's going to look like if we do get a cancellation of qualifying, which we're not expecting to happen, I should add. But if it does happen, if the track conditions don't get any better, in fact, if they get exponentially worse, the results of FP2 would go for the grid for the E-Prix this afternoon, which would mean that some drivers, including the likes of Cassidy, Evans, and of course the 2 Andrettis, would have a lot of work to do for the race here later on. But an interesting session there, Casey. What did you make of it? Nissan looking strong. Mahindra also up there as well.
Yeah, I was just about to say Mahindra when you consider their form from Monaco. They've obviously made some massive steps, and this is in the wet as well. So, yeah, I think they could be happy.
This man will certainly be happy. Oliver Rowland continuing in his imperious form, nearly 7/10 of a second quicker than Edo Mortara at the end of that session. Whatever he seems to touch, Andre, just turns to gold at the moment.
Yeah, it's one of these seasons where everything goes your way. You know, we've seen drivers having great seasons like that, and it's just great momentum. Jack Dennis had a season like that where everything just works super well.
What about Taylor Barnard as well? Great end to the session there for him, 4th quickest. Given the disappointment of yesterday, that's he'll be happy with that, I imagine, no doubt about it, because he was saying on the track walk that making sure that he got as much track time as possible would be crucial for him at his first visit here to this Tokyo circuit, and obviously yesterday ended up in the wall after 10 minutes. But here, today, 4th quickest in FP2 and looking pretty good.
You've got to get back on the horse after something like that, haven't you?
No doubt about it. So then, a wet and wild free practice 2 session saw Oliver Rowland lighting the car up as he exited out of the pit lane when the green flag flew at the end of it to start free practice 2. And the upshot is, track conditions were pretty wet at the start of the session, but we got a fair amount of rain towards the end of it, and it caused quite a few incidents as well, including Nick Cassidy, who ended up in the barrier at one point in the session as well. And also Mitch Evans having a few wide moments in that session. Zane Maloney, quite an eventful FP2 also, as a few drivers began to explore the limits. Oliver Rowland, though, looks in imperious form, didn't he, over the course of that one. No surprise to him at all. Just doesn't seem to make any mistakes right when it matters. Oliver Rowland. Saw some great shots of Tictum harrying his Cupra Kiro around. We saw, unfortunately for the other Cupra Kiro of David Beckmann, a problem which brought out the red flag. And then we saw de Vries and Zane Maloney coming to blows in the final chicane there as well. After the red flag ceased to be, and we got the session back underway. The upshot is that Oliver Rowland ended up the quickest driver of the lot ahead of Edo Mortara and Norman Nato. Taylor Barnard up there in 4th place ahead of Nick de Vries inside the top 5 here in Tokyo. So then, what do you think we've learned, Andre, at the end of FP2? Do you think that gives us an indication of what we should expect into quali?
Well, let's see, because if you look at the gaps, they're huge between the first and the last driver. It's like 6.4 seconds, so I don't think that's very usual. So some teams will scratch their head and definitely come back with solutions and improve. So I think, yeah, there might be a trend in the top 10, but then everything from there onwards, it's questionable if they got a good lap, if they made too many mistakes. So it's just hard to say.
Yeah, no doubt about it. A frantic end to that session, and some drivers will be wanting to make improvements as we head into qualifying, which gets underway in 90 minutes' time here in Tokyo, as we get ready to see how the grid is going to line up for round 8 of the ABB FIA Formula E World Championship. Hopefully the weather conditions will improve. Let's see what happens and who will get pole position here in Japan.